Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Film Club podcast, where every month we deep dive into a different aspect of cinema. Directors, actors, franchises, doesn't matter, because it's always fun at the Film Club. I'm Dean.
I'm Boo.
And this month we're talking about a director, your favorite director.
My favorite director. We had to go through yours during your birthday month, so we're going to go through my favorite director for my birthday month. We're going to be talking about Tim Burton all of December.
Yes, we are. And how best to start with Tim Burton than with his first movie?
First feature film, Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Yes, starring Paul Reubens, directed by Tim Burton, comes out in 1985, and this launches him into the fucking stratosphere, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. This is the movie that made him Tim Burton.
Well, the movie that made him Tim Burton was Beetlejuice, but okay, Tim Burton has never been like my guy. Like I've never been like, oh, Tim Burton's favorite director, but he's like one of the first directors I was able to identify watching, right? Because Beetlejuice, Edward Scissorhands, Batman, they all have a very distinctive style.
Yeah.
And it's insane to me because I thought, oh, well, he probably made like a couple indie movies that probably didn't work out. No, his first film is Pee-wee's Big Adventure, which is a massive hit.
Yeah.
He follows it up with Beetlejuice, which is another massive hit that shouldn't work on paper. Both of these movies shouldn't work on paper. And then he does Batman, which takes over the world and just destroys every box office across like generations, right?
Yes.
And I'm like, he started with fucking Pee-wee?
Yeah.
That does not compute with me that he starts with Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Why not? I mean, doesn't this kind of fall into the realm of the world of Tim Burton, where it's just, very vibrant and loud and...
It's not German expressionist enough.
No, it's hard to explain it. It's Tim Burton. It's his style.
There are a lot of aspects of the film that feel Tim Burton-y, like the 50s kitschy stuff, like that's very Tim Burton-y, but the issue that I've bumped against is that it's also the Paul Reubens, Pee-wee Herman aesthetic.
Yeah.
Which I think that's probably why they paired up so well to each other, is because they both were like drawing from the exact same pool of influence, 50s kitschy TV, they were both into monster movies, both into this and that.
Yeah.
It feels like this was like the Tim Burton style is filtered through the Pee-wee Herman aesthetic, but Beetlejuice, that's like full on Tim Burton style, right?
I mean,
we talked about Beetlejuice last month
in
before?
October.
In October, you're right.
Yeah.
No secret we record these wildly out of order.
Yeah, it happens, but yeah, we see the beginning of the Tim Burton aesthetic, and we see it evolve over the years. But this is totally in the camp of Tim Burton aesthetics.
I would say so, yeah. It's just, I feel it's a little filtered. But Pee-wee Herman.
Yes.
I'm assuming you were a Pee-wee Herman kid?
Oh, absolutely. I grew up watching the movie, grew up watching Pee-wee's Playhouse. Well, both movies, Big Top Pee-wee as well.
I had never seen this movie, Big Top. My only exposure to Pee-wee Herman was Pee-wee's Playhouse, the TV show, right? So when I see this movie yesterday, I'm like, where's Cowboy Curtis? Where's the genie? Where's Cherry?
Here we start up with some of your lies, because you didn't just watch it for the first time yesterday. You watched it for the first time at the Frida a few months ago.
I said yesterday for comedic effect, but yes, we did see this in theaters for, it was a memorial screening for Paul Reubens?
Yeah, it was his memorial screening, and it was also during our, quote, hurricane that we got.
Oh, yep.
Whatever the name, was it Hurricane Hillary?
Something like that, yeah, because California has this thing where if it rains, then it's a monsoon that will destroy the state. And granted, it was like actually a big, like, hurricane thing, but we live so far inland that it got to us and nothing. It was a light drizzle for like a few hours. It
wasn't a light drizzle. We got a lot of rain, but yeah, we went. A lot of people ended up not going because, again, we had a tropical storm warning. And yeah, Dean was the only one in the room that hadn't seen the movie before.
I was literally the only one. There was a room of like maybe 30 people in there.
I think it was less, because both screenings were completely sold out. And then because of the storm, not that many people went. But
I just know a lot of people looked at me, and I think the guy who asked the question literally laughed at me.
he laughed at you, but before that, there was a lady that was sitting maybe behind us or 2 rows behind us that audibly gasped when she, heard, "No, I've never seen it before." She was like, and I'm like, yeah, my same reaction, lady. I couldn't believe it.
Well, again, it's one of those things. I watched the show. The movie, I don't know how I missed this one.
You miss a lot of classics.
No. Okay, here's the thing. I don't miss a lot of classics. It's just like very specific era of film I just have no context for. Because again, my parents are like, watch whatever you want. Like, I don't like, they just didn't care. Like, I could just watch Predator at like 6, like, or Terminator, or all this other stuff. So there's like kids movies of very specific eras that I just have no exposure to. And this is kind of in there, that like late 80s, early 90s era. I just have no exposure to that as like from a child's perspective. Like, I have no nostalgia for any of this stuff.
Yeah.
But, you want to talk about like Predator, Aliens, or anything like that. Oh yeah, I watched those a bunch as a kid. Those were great. Last Action Hero fucking slaps, by the way.
I do love Last Action Hero.
John McTiernan, he's out of prison now. We're gonna get some more great movies, I swear.
But today we're talking about Pee-wee. We're not talking about Predator, Aliens, Last Action Hero.
Same era. But yeah, we are talking about
But someday in the future, maybe.
Maybe. But yeah, this movie has a very weird way of coming into existence. Because, what is it? I guess people might not know this or realize this, but the movie came before the show.
Yes.
And
the act of Pee-wee came before the movie.
Yeah, and that's like another weird thing, was Paul Reubens basically, for those who don't know, he was like an improv like guy in like Southern California, and he was like almost on SNL, and he was basically like,
yeah, he was a stand-up comedian through the 70s. He tried to get on SNL, and they ended up dropping him like the day before or the week before he was supposed to come on the show.
He was one of the front runners for the 79 season of SNL. So like, he was going to be on SNL with like Eddie Murphy, all these people,
with the bigs,
the big people of SNL, all the famous ones. And they dropped him like the very last second they could, and just went with like a different actor.
Yeah.
And he was like kind of pissed about it. And he's like, you know what? I'm going to make my own, act with blackjack and hookers. And he kind of created this idea of, I'm going to be a comedian that's a terrible comedian. And from that kind of spawned the Pee-wee Herman original character, I think.
Yeah, he ended up creating Pee-wee, and then he would, do it at these shows, and then it kind of turned into this thing where, okay, we're not going to go see Paul Reubens, we're going to go see Pee-wee, his, stage act. And then it spawned into a movie deal.
Yeah, it's the thing that happened with like Ernest.
Yeah.
Which, okay, I was not a Pee-wee kid. Like, I want to call myself a Pee-wee kid, but I was an Ernest kid.
I loved Ernest too.
I watched all those Ernest movies, like Jim Varney, like fucking right here. I loved all of those movies. Ernest Scared Stupid, Ernest Goes to Camp, Ernest Goes to Africa. I watched
Ernest Saves Christmas.
Ernest Saves Christmas, Ernest Slam Dunk. There's God damn it, there's so many of those fucking Ernest movies. Ernest Goes to Prison.
Yeah.
But yeah, like that was kind of a similar thing that happened, because Jim Varney got the job of being just a local TV spokesperson for like some local ad campaign. And
it was what was it, like the Grey Poupon mustard, or it was something. It was before our time.
Oh yeah, this was like in like the early 80s, I think. But he got big doing an ad campaign locally, like in Tennessee or some shit. And then somebody was like, this guy's like got something. We'll go national with this. And then everyone was like, this commercial's like kind of funny, and he's got a very like weird vibe. Maybe we'll make a cartoon about it. And then they're like, the cartoon and everything's doing well. Now let's put him in movies. And he made like 14 movies. Yeah. It launched his career. And like, people don't realize that like Ernest and like Jim Varney's an actor, and Ernest P. Worrell is a character he portrays on screen. And that's the same thing that happened with Paul Rubin and Pee-wee Herman. Like, if people don't know this, Paul Reubens had never done an interview on live television as Paul Reubens. He had been on Letterman, SNL, all these shows as
Joan Rivers, so many shows. And yeah, he came on as Pee-wee because he was Pee-wee. Pee-wee was an extension of Paul Rubens. And it's one of those rare instances where you see an actor create a character and still love that character.
Yes, because this happens with a lot of actors who embody a character, become widely popular, become part of the pop culture lexicon.
Mhm.
Like Leonard Nimoy as Spock. That's the famous one.
Mhm.
He was like, I was Spock for 3 seasons of Star Trek, a couple of movies, and no one can take me seriously as an actor because they only see Mr. Spock.
Mhm.
Like, I cannot play, I can't do King Lear anymore without people saying, oh, look, it's Mr. Spock doing Shakespeare. He's like, I can't escape that. Paul Rubens was like, yeah, people kind of like, it got old after a while, but I still love doing the character.
Mhm.
He came back to do it. And it's, a thing where eventually he was like, I just can't keep up with being Pee-wee Herman anymore. I kind of want to like go away and do something else. And then he goes away and, has like whatever. And then he comes back in 99 with Mystery Men. So he has like a very interesting career arc. And like the Jim Varney Ernest thing is the closest I could equate to the Pee-wee Herman like trajectory.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have Tim Burton, who like he's your favorite director, right?
I think so. I think we mapped it out like a year ago or 2 years ago where I was like, I don't know, because I love so many, different genres of film. I love Spielberg movies, but I was like, really to the core of me, yeah, Tim Burton is my favorite.
I remember you said that and I was like, not fucking surprised. You were literally
It's a thing.
You were literally doing the episode in a Nightmare shirt, like a literal Nightmare Before Christmas shirt.
Yeah, it happens. I have many of them.
Yes. But Tim Burton, like he's going to be the theme of the whole month. So there's a whole like career trajectory we're going to go into. But let's just get started with how does he come into this movie?
Which is kind of weird. I didn't know either because I never really thought about it. It's I just enjoy the movie.
Yeah, you take the product, right? It's this weird like backstory though is kind of wild because what is it? He worked for like Disney.
Yeah, Tim Burton worked for Disney, Disney Touchstone. We talked about that a little bit in our Nightmare Before Christmas episode a few months ago.
Yeah.
But it was a thing where we got to talk about Pee-wee before we could talk about Tim Burton. Warner Brothers approached Pee-wee because they had seen his stage show and they were like, we love this. We want you to make a movie. And Paul Rubens, when he was in the process of doing this, he had never written a script before. And he was like, you know what? Pollyanna is my favorite movie. Let me write a movie that's basically Pollyanna. And then this is where inspiration struck, was he was on the Warner Brothers backlot, and it was something that we had mentioned when we were there for our tour earlier this year, was the amount of bikes that are at Warner Brothers, and it was so cool that they're keeping with tradition.
Well,
and that's what he saw. He saw the bikes, and he was like, you know what? I'm going to switch it from Pollyanna to a story about a bike.
Well, that's the thing. Like, it's half tradition and just half practicality. This is something wild. If you ever go to any film set, a bunch of people rolling around on bikes because it's just easier to get around on a big studio on a bike because you can't just get into a golf cart every time. You can't get into a car every time. And the studios are huge. So a lot of people just roll around on bikes. And it's just funny that Paul Rubens is like, I'm just going to do a remake of Pollyanna, but with Pee-wee Herman in it. And then he sees a bike and he's like, wait a minute. I got an idea. Because, what is it? I know he co-wrote it with Phil Hartman?
With Phil Hartman, who is, very famous. He was on SNL.
He was also the voice of Troy McClure on The Simpsons.
Yes, he was. And also Michael Varhol. I'm not too familiar with him.
But I know that they never had seen a screenplay or written a screenplay before.
They had to go buy a book, How to Write a Screenplay.
I have the book. It's Sid Field's How to Write a Screenplay. That is the textbook that I was given for film school of how to write a screenplay. And I think that's why Pee-wee's Big Adventure, we're going to get into it when we get into the actual movie. It's why its structure is very strong.
They wrote 90 pages and the movie ended up being 90 minutes.
Yes. And that's the equation, right? Every page of screen every page of a screenplay is 1 page of actual footage or 1 minute of footage. You get what I mean. But it is really interesting that that Warner Brothers is like, fuck it, yeah, just kind of wing it. Just do whatever. They must have had so much confidence in the Pee-wee act and aesthetic. It might have just been a thing where Cheech and Chong came out and they're like, oh, well, Cheech and Chong, like, they were basically the same thing. They were kind of this, like, stand-up act and,
The Blues Brothers.
Blues Brothers, these...
It's like people want to go to the theater and laugh.
Yeah, well, they were like, these are just random sketch characters, but they just work on screen. So we'll just do it with Pee-wee, right?
Yeah. So it was also a thing where we've got this group of guys that are now writing the script, and now they need a director. And I was kind of like, well, yeah, how did Tim Burton get into the equation? So apparently Paul Rubens had seen Vincent. We talked about it during our Nightmare episode.
I believe so, but we were a little brief with it. So, because what happens, because I had to look this up too. So, because Tim Burton goes out of Cal Arts, and he graduates with basically everyone who founds Pixar.
Yeah.
Like, he's in classes with, like, Bill Burr and, like, John Lasseter, all these guys. He goes over to Disney. They are trying to get him incorporated because they're like, he's talented, but everything he animates is, like either too weird, too dark. It's just not Disney enough. But they don't want to, like, kick him out of Disney or fire him because, look, he's not working for us, but he can go off to another company and he might make something that'll be too good. So they give him just money and be like, just animate something, just do something, because they're trying to incubate talent and be like, eventually we'll find something that get this guy to work on. And that's how he gets the funding for Vincent. And it's like,
he makes Vincent in 82, and from there he makes Frankenweenie in 84, and that's when he leaves Disney.
Yeah, and Frankenweenie gets, like, around the studios and around everyone, and they're like, this is a calling card. Like, this guy can direct.
Oh, yeah, and it's a thing where people are just like, wow, this is really good. You know, this weird guy, quote unquote, that, you know, he's not, he doesn't...
Hold up. He is kind of a weird guy.
Sorry, but this is my realm, so he's not...
Do you see that man's hair?
Yeah,
he's kind of a weird guy.
And it's hair.
It's weird.
But, you know, Paul Rubens sees Vincent, and he's kind of like, yo, this is fire. Let's hire him. And he hires him and Tim Burton meet, and it's a thing where Tim Burton's like, wow, we're kind of similar. You know, we have the same kind of humor. We like off-the-wall kitschy things.
It's exactly what we were saying before, is they were pulling from the exact same well. It's just like, Tim Burton took it as like, oh, we'll make it kind of like creepy and dark and like spooky, but it'll still be funny. And Paul Rubens like, let's make it wacky.
And then to really, talk about history, we have Tim Burton and Danny Elfman for the first time, and it's because of Paul Rubens. Pee-wee brought these two legends together, and the world would change after in a beautiful way.
Really?
Yeah. They were looking for a composer, and he asked if they could hire Danny Elfman because he was a big fan of Oingo Boingo. And they're like, yeah, let's go for it. And then history was made.
It is it is fascinating to me that in 85, Warner Brothers is like, we'll just, because this movie cost what, like 5 million, 10 million to make in 85?
Let's see. The budget was $6 million.
Okay. The budget for this movie is like $6 million. 85, that's probably like 20-ish, 30-ish million now. But that's like a thing. They just kind of gave them money and be like, just do whatever you want, guys. Like, it'll be fine. And then I know you've never written a screenplay before. Just wing it. Oh, I know you kind of want this weird, unproven composer. Just wing it. I know you wanted to hire this director who has only directed 2 short films and is kind of weird. Sure, just roll with it. It is astounding to me that the studio is just like, fuck it, go for it. Whatever, we'll figure it out later.
It made $4 million in its opening weekend.
It made $4 million in its opening weekend, and then proceeded to make $4 million every single weekend that followed until it hit like what, 40 million, 100 million?
41 million.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, it's 41 million, and then that equates to I think 100 million today. It's something like that. Yeah. I did the inflation calculator before. But it is wild that this movie just kept on keeping on. And it just kind of works. It just kind of works.
It does. It's a good movie. I love this movie.
But now we should probably tell people what the movie's about.
Yes.
Now I busted out the back of the box today. It's been a while.
It has been. It's a special day.
It is. But for anyone wondering what the movie's about, here's what it's about. A hyper-energetic man-child gets his prized bike stolen, and he vows to get it back. He then treks across America, from truck stops, biker bars, train cars, and the Alamo, on his quest to save his bike, eventually landing him on a Hollywood backlot and a movie deal on the horizon. This is the story of Pee-wee Herman.
Haha.
Oh God. But yeah, the it is very interesting that they are structuring this entire movie as a road comedy, right? Pee-wee is running across America to try and save his bicycle, which is like such a low stakes thing in the normal world, but is so very deeply important to the character of Pee-wee Herman.
Yeah, because I mean, think of it, Pee-wee's like a big kid.
Yes.
And, and there's children that absolutely love their bikes. And it's like you could totally see that's why this is so important. He's a big kid. His bike, his beloved, has been stolen from him, and he's willing to go to the end of the earth to find it.
That is something that struck me when the movie got started, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because, he lives on his own, he has his own house, he has a dog, whatever. And I'm trying to figure in my head, I'm like, okay, like, I know the universe is elevated, but there's, like, parents and all this stuff. How old is Pee-wee?
I don't think we ever have a
structure as to how old he is. Because Pee-wee is, like, I think I wrote down hyper energetic man child, but he's not a man. He's pitched as like a 7-year-old, like a hyper energetic like child.
Yeah,
like,
he's a man child.
Yeah, he's a man child, but it's like there's no like like man or like he's literally has the vibe of
there's man because that man's obviously paying a mortgage.
Yeah, and in California,
that house is in Pasadena.
That's a lot. That's a high mortgage.
It is.
But it is one of those things where I'm like, I don't really understand like the Pee-wee structure, right? Because he's acting like kind of this, kid who's just like kind of a snarky kid, because sometimes Pee-wee's like a little rude to people, but it's like he's walking a fine line. I'll put it like that. Paul Rubens is walking a very fine line with this character between incredibly annoying or coming off as some sort of parody of like a very specific type of character that just doesn't work, and it just happens to work. I don't know why it's working so well.
You look so confused.
I am. This movie's really confusing. Just on the whole, like, Pee-wee Herman is very confusing, honestly. Like, why does Pee-wee work?
It just does.
See, that's the thing. You're like, it just does. Like,
let me hit you with your favorite phrase. It's lightning in a bottle.
That's your favorite phrase.
No, it's yours because you bring it up and you're like, I don't understand this lightning in a bottle. It just works.
It just works.
It does.
It's an unexplainable thing in the universe.
Yes.
But yeah, so the movie opens with Pee-wee basically just like waking up in this nice, goofy house that's not the house from, Pee-wee's Playhouse, which I'm so angry about.
No, these are two different worlds.
Yes,
or two different universes.
Which is weird a little bit, because that's a thing that happens in like anytime Pee-wee exists, it's always in a different world.
It's
right?
not that weird because the show didn't exist when the movie came out.
Well, the show doesn't exist when the movie comes out, but also like the rest of the movies he's in exist in like different worlds.
Yeah. Big Top Pee-wee, he's a farmer, and in oh my god, the one with Joe Manganiello.
Is that Pee-wee's Holiday?
Pee-wee's Holiday, yeah. It's again, like we're traveling the world. So it's just, yeah, he lives in different universes and it all is fun. I mean, there's heartbreak, obviously, his bike's gone, but it's just a fun time.
Yeah, it is. It is a fun time. This movie is fun. I haven't seen the rest of them, but this movie is fun. It's just, again, it's fascinating that this Pee-wee character, like the bit for Pee-wee on like all the SNL or whatever things wasn't, oh, we're going to have Paul, dress up as this. It was, no, we're going to put Pee-wee Herman into these weird situations. And that was a sketch show.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, that's just like fascinating to me that you just insert Pee-wee into something and now it's a Pee-wee Herman thing.
Oh, yeah.
You put Pee-wee Herman into Seven and now it's, a Pee-wee Herman movie.
I don't see anything wrong with that.
That would be so weird. How weird would it be if Paul Rubens was like the Morgan Freeman character in Seven? Would that just be super weird?
I'd still watch it.
Of course you would. Seven's a good movie.
Also,
yeah.
anything with Pee-wee. I'll watch it.
Anything with Pee-wee?
Anything.
But yeah, so the movie like gets going, and
We see his routine.
yes,
We enter the movie. He's having a dream. He's on his bike and he's winning the Tour de France.
yes, and he's has like a little cape on, and
Oh no, it's the number on his back.
yeah, but it looks like a little cape.
Well, yeah, because they're gonna put the crown on him, so he's the king.
Oh, of course, because
Yeah.
again, little cape, little crown. It's wonderful.
And then we wake up to his awesome bedroom.
Yes, this is what you would define as an awesome bedroom.
I've wanted
if you
his
were a
house
child.
my entire life.
I mean, it's nice and all, but like, it's
Hey,
not
real
that
estate.
great.
Real estate's pretty good in Pasadena.
No, it's not. Everything's expensive.
Exactly.
But yeah, so he wakes up. He's gonna go to the magic shop, and
Well, no, he's got a day full of
adventure.
Errands that Pee-wee has to run. Going to the bike shop, going to the magic shop. Trying to be cool on his bike and do tricks.
Doesn't he do tricks in front of like a bunch of like kids, and they're like, "Man, that Pee-wee over there with his cool bike."
No, it's just like, what's that grown guy on the bike doing? And then he wipes out, on some trash cans, which I've done, imitating that scene.
It's a thing where this whole opening, we're just getting the vibe that Pee-wee is a child.
And
Like, he is not an adult. He is a child. Like, these kids are the only kids we see in the movie, because there's Francis, his like rival.
yeah,
that-
which we never get backstory on why they're rivals, but Francis is a jackass, basically, or a spoiled ass, where it's like, okay, I can see why there would be an issue.
It's the thing where they're both like they are both Pee-wee types. It's just Francis is malicious, where I think Pee-wee is more sincere.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a thing where it is interesting that these two are acting like children, and then when we see the actual children, they're just acting like normal, normal human beings.
And I think that's why that opening scene is so important, because we see his routine, but we see how different his routine is from most adults. You wake up, go brush your teeth, you make breakfast. It's playtime.
Yeah.
It's he's got the oversized toothbrush, the breakfast scene. I mean, I think that's one of the most important scenes in film history, the breakfast machine.
It goes the intro of The Godfather. It goes Citizen Kane, the breakfast scene from Pee-wee.
Absolutely.
Impressive.
I mean, that's one of the greatest scores that Danny Elfman has ever composed. That whole breakfast thing, because it's very
I feel
circusy.
like every time we talk about Danny Elfman, you're going to be like, this is the greatest theme Danny Elfman has ever composed. And every single time.
Am I wrong?
Every theme is the greatest theme he's ever composed.
Am I wrong?
I mean, there's a ranking system when you qualify it like that, but
But I mean, it's a great scene. The music works. Just seeing, the ingenuity that Pee-wee has, that, he's able to have just, toys and other things basically cook him breakfast.
Yeah, it's a Rube Goldberg machine.
Yeah.
You gotta love a good Rube Goldberg machine.
You have the Mr. T cereal, which I still want to try Mr. T cereal. It needs to happen.
Good luck with that?
They might bring it back. They brought back the Oreo cereal. They could bring back the Mr. T cereal.
One of those I feel is far more popular than the other.
You know what's bad? Ariel is so young. When I told her about the Oreo cereal, she didn't believe me. She wasn't alive when the Oreo cereal first came out.
Wait, what the fuck?
Yeah, it hurt.
Wait, when was the Oreo cereal?
Probably before her.
Jesus Christ.
Or she was a baby and didn't know. It's just like, how do you not know? Oreo cereal is one of the best cereals ever created.
Jesus Christ. Okay. Fucking Pee-wee's a Big Adventure. All right, let's actually get over this, because
Okay.
he gets to the magic shop. He is doing his thing. He's gonna buy wonderful gags because Pee-wee is a child and he loves the magic
That's what
shop.
he does. He's got to go pick up some extra bow ties.
Yes,
That's like him going to his version of Target.
exactly. And he leaves his bike chained up outside on a clown.
Yeah, because apparently everyone where Pee-wee lives rides their bikes. So all the bike stands are taken. And then that's when we get the great scene with him, pulling out, I don't know, feet of chain just to lock the bike up on the clown.
Yeah, it's like 100 yards of chain he's using to lock up the bike, and it's just very interesting that we open this movie and we already get that this is not a real world.
No.
Nothing in here is real. This is a living cartoon.
This is pre-SpongeBob.
Yes. And, it's all this cartoon. He's going to the magic shop, and then he goes to the bike shop to pick up something for his bike, and this is where he meets Dottie?
Yeah, Dottie, she works at the bike shop. She's interested in him, and Pee-wee, being a child, doesn't understand why she's giving him so much attention. It's kind of like, I'm just here to pick up the horn from my bike, and it's just, she's over here, well, you could take me out on a date, and it's just like, why? Why would I do that? I've got so much going on in my life.
And it's not a thing where in other comedies it's like, oh, he's oblivious to it. It's like, no, he has just no interest in it. It's a thing where Pee-wee almost exists as this kind of asexual character. Like he just kind of is. Like he doesn't, like other people don't like affect Pee-wee. Pee-wee is just this thing that exists in the universe that affects others.
It's like Sheldon before he meets Amy.
No, Pee-wee is chaos. He's the chaos that exists in the universe that everything spawns out of.
Well, I hate to, break it to you. You got to watch Big Top Pee-wee, because in that movie, he's engaged, and then he breaks off his engagement and falls in love with someone from the circus.
Just like a sequel to ignore the lore established of its first.
It gets pretty, pretty hot and bothered.
Big Top Pee-wee, just ignoring the lore set up in this.
No, but yeah. We have him at the bike shop. Dottie's trying to put the moves on him. We have the great bit, you don't want to get mixed up with a guy like me, Dottie. I'm a loner, a rebel.
I'm dangerous.
I'm dangerous. And then, he leaves. He's, so happy with himself that he let her down in this cool guy way. And then the bike's gone.
The bike's gone. He faints, I think?
Yeah, he comes back into the bike shop with the horn, honks it, and then collapses and knocks all the bikes down because he's got to be extra with this, revelation.
Of course. And it's this kind of leads into, I want to say, probably my favorite gag of the movie.
Oh, when he has the meeting?
Yes, because the cops are like, hey, this is we can't really do anything for you. But so Pee-wee's taking it on himself to track his bike down. So he calls in the entire town to his basement, and it's like, I have here 23 pieces of evidence, and each one of these pieces of evidence is going to lead to the thief of my bike. And then it goes on.
Well, yeah, because it's not 23 pieces. It's A to Z.
It's A to Z.
A to Z. And he's going to go through each and every number.
And
each and every letter of evidence to prove, this conspiracy.
And he starts going through it, and I love bits like this where it's just like, oh, this is a bit that's just, it's really long, and it just keeps going, and it stops being funny, and then it gets funny again. But there's a point where he's like talking about his evidence, and somebody starts like whispering in the thing, and he's like, hey, do you have something you want to share? Amazing Larry! And it cuts over to this middle-aged guy who's just kind of looks like he's a little down on his luck with a giant mohawk that's just unexplained. And I'm like, why? And
there's thunder and lightning.
And I'm like, why is his name Amazing Larry? And then they don't acknowledge it again. It just goes back to him being like,
well, I think Amazing Larry is friends with Mario, who owns the magic shop.
I mean, he might, but this is the first time you see him. But there's this whole lore that this movie is just not explaining, and I'm like, that's just hilarious.
Yeah.
The fact that Amazing Larry just exists as this middle-aged guy with a mohawk is like, that's just funny. It's just funny. He just exists in this world, and
he's just a person like every other person.
It's funny. He's funny looking. And then he goes back into like explaining everything, and then Pee-wee is like, I like how at the end of it, Pee-wee's voice is a little hoarse because he's been talking nonstop.
He's been talking for hours, yeah.
And I like that, and I like the bit. And then he's like, I'm gonna go out and figure it out on my own. And then he runs into the fortune teller. Is this the fortune teller?
Yeah, he goes out, and again, we're on the back lot of Warner Brothers, and he finds the.
We'll be back here again later.
Yes, we will be back there later. But I think, it's somewhere. I think I read it. The gang of guys that jumps out at him when they're like, you're new to this area. This is our turf. I think Tim Burton was one of the guys that was part of that gang.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think I read that somewhere. But yeah, he goes and he sees the fortune teller. And, of course, because she's committing a con, She's like, "Oh yeah, you're looking for something. Oh, let me look through your wallet here. Oh, your bike. Yeah, yeah. Go to the Alamo, the basement of the Alamo."
And I like how he's just like, I don't think you actually are a fortune teller. And she's like, well, are you looking for something? He's like, all right, maybe you are a fortune teller. And it is again, like every scene in this movie is, just is a joke. Every scene is a joke.
And the fortune teller is Madame Ruby.
Madame Ruby?
Madame Ruby. I was trying to remember.
Should I know that?
No, but it's just I was like, I know it. I know her name. Yeah, Madame Ruby.
Okay. Okay. That's the character's name. I thought you were saying that's the actress's name. And I'm
yes,
like, who the fuck is Madame Ruby?
Academy Award winning Madame Ruby. Yes.
You don't know? Like, I could have been a thing. Like, Elvira's in this movie.
Yes, she is, because her and Paul Rubens were friends for decades.
It is again really weird to think about, these people and being like, oh yeah, like, because Cassandra Peterson was like a showgirl and all this other stuff, but she was like an entertainer, right?
Yeah, she was
a while before she did Elvira.
Yeah, and then she found her character just like Paul Rubens did, and she became Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. We saw her at horror. Well, we didn't see her, but we saw her merch at
Halloween Horror Nights.
No, not Scary Farm.
Not Scary Farm. Same thing.
I was gonna say Horror Nights, and I'm like, no, we went to Scary Farm. And yes, I wanted to bow down to my queen.
So cringy. But
I love her.
It's a thing where, like, it's just fascinating because, like, oh yeah, Pee-wee Herman. Oh yeah, ha ha ha. Oh, that was probably a bit he did in college. And, like, no, he, like, worked for a decade in improv as, like, a professional comedian.
Yeah,
before that.
And that's, like, the same with Elvira. She was a comedian, and it's just, all these people that run in these groups. It's kind of like, that group of directors where it was like Coppola, Spielberg.
Oh, the movie brats, yeah.
And it's just like, it's fascinating when you see all these incredibly talented people grouped together. And then when you talk about them and you think about it and you're like, my God, how is it possible that all these amazing people ended up in these same little groups of friends?
Well, okay, here's an interesting thing. Because you bring up the movie brats, right? Because Tim Burton, he's not in the movie brat era.
No.
He's like a decade too young to be a part of that group. Just like plain and simple, right? But I found this out about like the production thing, and I know we're like digressing a lot, but his first movie was not supposed to be Pee-wee's Big Adventure. He was signed on to do After Hours.
Yeah.
If you know that movie. And he was signed on. The producer was like really like dug it. Like Tim Burton, like, hey, I want to do this. He built a bunch of models and showed him, like, this is how we're going to shoot it. We're going to use some forced perspective. We're really going to, like, I really want to do this movie. It's going to be great. And the producer was like, Tim, 100% in. Yeah, we're going to finalize the script, and we're going to, like, get you into the studio. This is going to be your big, major motion picture debut. But at that time, Martin Scorsese had been grinding away trying to get Last Temptation of Christ made, and he just couldn't do it. And he's like, I need to get a movie done. I need to keep myself in the ballpark. I need to get this like urge to make a movie out of my soul so that I can just refocus on to trying to get the passion project made. And he reads After Hours and he's like, yo, I really want to do this. And the producer's like, I'm sorry, Mr. Scorsese. I got this guy over here, Tim Burton. He's the next big thing. He's going to make the movie. And then Tim Burton's like, bro, that's Martin fucking Scorsese. I quit. Like, he's like, what do you mean? He's like, that's Martin fucking Scorsese.
Yep.
He gets the job. I'll figure myself out. Give it to Marty. And that's like, as the mythology of Tim Burton he was like, his first movie, the thing that was supposed to break him out, stratosphere, big career move. He was like, no, I'll give it up to Marty. He can do it. It's fine. Like, I'll figure myself out. It's cool.
He waited for fate, and this movie was fate.
Yes, it is wild to me. But that was, the fun movie brat thing, right?
Yeah. And we were talking about, how all these groups, come together, and it's so fascinating to see so many talented, famous people that were just friends to start with and were, cutting their teeth on whatever they could. And it's just, they become legends.
Yeah.
But this movie is so jam-packed with celebrity cameos. It is ridiculous.
Yeah, and not a lot of them are obvious.
No.
There's a lot of like, oh, there's that character under a bunch of makeup, but oh wait, that's Elvira, or oh, that guy who has one scene and is just kind of like a 3-line character. Oh, well, that's like Phil Hartman. There's a bunch of people like that. But where we are in the story right now is Pee-wee has finally, hampered down. He's like, I'm going to go to the Alamo. I'm going to go and get my bike. I'm going to the basement of the Alamo and not check beforehand if there's a basement at the Alamo, but I know it's going to be there.
Hey, this is pre-Google days.
Pre-Google days, exactly. This is when men were men and Pee-wees were Pee-wees.
And then, before this journey begins, we have Pee-wee that's out there, doing the meeting and putting up posters for his bike. And he knows that Francis took his bike because that's where they meet, right after his morning routine. And Francis is trying to buy the bike from Pee-wee. And Pee-wee's, not for $1 million, billion, trillion will I sell this bike to you. And then, poof, the bike's suddenly gone. And right as, he's getting ready to go on his adventure, we see right before Francis and, the little thug that he hired to steal the bike.
Yes.
And Francis is feeling the heat because Pee-wee's on the radio. He's got posters. So it's like, Pee-wee was right. He trusted his instincts. And now the bike is on its own journey because they got to get rid of the stolen goods.
Yes, so it's very funny because we see the bike a few times throughout the movie, but Pee-wee doesn't notice it.
Yeah, they're right next to each other, but they're always going down different paths.
Yeah, and it's one of those gags that just keeps on keeping on in the movie, and I kind of like it. I like those little sight gags, but
because it's nothing that's too extreme. It's just he's either looking in the wrong direction, and then the bike goes like right past him, or chaos ensues and he just misses it by like a second.
It's classic shtick.
Mm-hmm.
It's classic shtick. And it's funny because like Francis set up, oh, he's the bad guy of the movie. He's the one who stole his bike. And then he's out of the movie until the third act.
Yes.
And we're like, okay, so now we know Francis stole the bike. So the bike's location is not really a mystery to us, but it's a mystery to Pee-wee. And we're following, and when we finally get the payoff of, where the bike actually is, It's like, oh, cool, fun little twist, what have you. But Pee-wee, he sets out on the road, and wow, this is the problem I have with this movie is it's a lot of great gags, and it's a lot of great vignettes because it's structured like, a road movie, a road comedy, right? I can't tell you the order of what any of this movie is. Because, like, once he hits the road, I look at that as, like, these are just little, like, 5-minute, 10-minute gag vignettes throughout.
Yeah, because, I mean, he ends up in Cabazon where the dinosaurs are, and that's where he meets Simone. And, they have, the heart-to-heart conversation, everyone has a butt. What's your big butt, Simone? That great line.
There's the part where Pee-wee runs across, like, a criminal escaping prison, and there's a whole bit where they're like, there's the police block off Pee-wee. I don't think we're gonna make it. And Pee-wee's like, don't worry, I have an idea. And then he's in like a dress, and like the bit isn't that it's like, oh, it's a man dressed in a woman's clothes. The bit is Pee-wee is committed to this performance as a woman, and it's hilarious.
He's hitting on the cop. He's being very, very cute. And, they finally, he's had it with Pee-wee because this is where they go off the cliff when Pee-wee's driving at night. And you have all the great, street signs where it keeps getting even more chaotic, and it's
like turn back now, dead end up ahead, have a nice day, like junk like that. And I love it when they crash and like, he's like, Pee-wee, I'm too dangerous for you, and leaves Pee-wee in the dark. And you get the animated eyes in like the darkness. It gets super surreal all of a sudden.
Well, when he leaves Pee-wee, he hits Pee-wee with his, you don't want to get mixed up with a guy like me, Pee-wee. I'm a loner, a rebel. I'll see you in the province land, or the promised lands. Arrivederci, baby. And then Pee-wee's like, wow, deja vu. And it's just like, yeah, man, you just said that to Dottie. And now you've got, this tough guy that's saying it to you. And then we jump into the very Tim Burton, animated with the eyes that are, looking for the X-ray goggles or the night vision goggles.
The night vision specs, and there's a lot of great sound design here. You're hearing like all this stuff, and I like when the lights come on and you see he's surrounded by like very obviously taxidermy animals. It's kind of hilarious.
But it's like as many taxidermy animals that they could find.
As many as you can fit into the screen.
Yeah.
Like it's a lot.
And it's mixed. It's like, bears, zebras. It's just everything.
I swear to God, and I really wish I went back to double check. I think there's a shark in the taxidermy, like in the background, like
I'd have to look again, but I wouldn't
it's like
be
a
surprised.
shark or a barracuda or something, but it's like next to a bear and a mountain lion. I want to say that's there, or I might just be misremembering, but I think there's something ridiculous in there. Like they put something super out of place in the taxidermy stuff, but
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me.
And then you also get the like the most Tim Burton moment of the movie, the Large Marge sequence.
Yeah, that's what leads him to the dinosaurs. But yeah, Large Marge is very important. She picks him up after Mickey drops him off.
This is the moment, because I mentioned to people, I was like, oh yeah, I'm watching like Pee-wee's Big Adventure or whatever, and they're like, oh, the Large Marge thing? That fucked me up as a kid.
Yeah.
And I'm like, really?
Terrified.
It's one of those things where, again, like this is going to be a thing throughout the Tim Burton month where, is this made for kids? Because
it's made for everyone.
It's made for everyone. But if you're like a little kid watching this and you get to the Large Marge section,
oh yeah, scared the shit out of me when I watched it, and I couldn't watch it for a long time. It was like I had to like look away because she just scared the crap out of me.
Because it's a thing where it's a kind of out of nowhere jump scare.
Yeah,
but it's not because it's a thing where you're like, oh well, I haven't seen anything like that wild up to this point. Like, nobody's transformed before my eyes
this
into
is
the
pre-Beetlejuice.
Yes, no one's transformed before my eyes into a visage of death like Large Marge does.
Yes.
And this is the first time you see... Okay, this here, we talked earlier that the Tim Burton aesthetic is within the movie, but it is filtered through the Pee-wee Herman style. Like, his style of comedy, because this is the Pee-wee Herman show, basically. And Tim Burton's just directing the piece. But this sequence... This is Tim Burton being like, I get all the Large Marge sequence. Large Marge looks like a character that could exist in any single Tim Burton movie. She looks like this whole sequence up to you get to the diner where all the, the truck,
Simone.
all the Simone and the trucks are like, yes, there's a dark, stormy night, just like this one. And they do the whole bit. That's like a Big Fish. You can put that in Big Fish, would work totally fine. This is the moment where I'm like, okay, this is where Tim Burton figured out exactly how to put the stuff he was animating onto screen.
Yeah, and we see that again with the dinosaurs. When he has the other dream sequence and the dinosaurs are eating his bike.
Yes.
So it's like we see like these, these flickers in the aesthetic of Tim Burton where it's, the creepy, effects and the jump scares and the stop motion animation.
And the comedy, too. People forget that Tim Burton's a comedy director. Like, all of his movies, for the most part, or well, at least for the golden era of Burton, are like comedies or very heavily comedic.
Yeah, I mean...
Look at it like this. Pee-wee's Big Adventure, comedy. Beetlejuice, comedy. Like Big Fish, yeah, there's drama stuff in there. It's a comedy. Batman... Yeah, it's an action superhero movie. There's a lot of comedy in that movie.
I mean, Jack Nicholson is just
chewing every scene.
Chomping on those scenes.
And it's funny. Like, Batman's a funny movie if you really watch it.
I mean, if you have a movie with the Joker in it and you're not laughing.
Exactly. I mean, like, Ed Wood. There's a lot of funny stuff in Ed Wood.
Yeah.
Mars Attacks. There's like, that's like another comedy. It's like a B-movie 50s, like, romp, right? Yeah. But, like, a lot of his movies are just straight up comedies. And it's a thing where it's like, well, they're all dark and spooky and have a weird aesthetic. And I'm like, yeah, but it's kind of like if Vincent Price told you a funny joke where you're like, I know he's creepy as hell, but god damn it, is that a good gag? And that's like, the Large Marge thing, right? Where it's like, she does the turns into a monster.
Scares the crap out of you, drops him off. And she tells him, before she drives, be sure to tell you Large Marge sent you.
And then they go in and they tell the exact same story Large Marge did about the dark and stormy night. And then you're like, oh god, this is just fucking a funny bit. I can't believe I was scared of this. It's a funny bit. The Large Marge sequence is probably the most iconic sequence of this film. It's definitely the one when I mentioned it, everyone was like, Large Marge, that bitch. Every single person I mentioned it to.
I don't think it's the most iconic, but it's up there.
I mean, like, what would be the more iconic scene other than Large Marge?
I definitely think the breakfast scene.
The breakfast scene?
Because it's so much chaos going on because it's him getting ready and them the house basically making breakfast.
It encapsulates the whole movie.
It does. But I mean, yeah, the Large Marge scene is really up there. Just, how dramatic it gets for that scene and the retelling of, the accident, and that night it's, it was a night just like tonight, this kind of ghost story. And then we, cut to him having his dinner, and my wallet's gone, and him, doing the cliche of, you don't have money to eat, you're gonna have to go wash dishes.
Yeah, there's a lot of good scenes in this movie, honestly. But what else do we get out of this? Out of like the middle section of the movie?
That's when, him and Simone connect, and then Simone has this
Alice doesn't live here. I want to go see the world, but I'm stuck in this dead end, town.
Well, she's also in this toxic relationship, and her boyfriend just happens to be pumping gas where, her and Pee-wee are talking, and he's just waiting, for the next morning to kill Pee-wee with one of the fake bones that's on the sign for the Cabazon dinosaurs. And you have comedy ensuing. You have a big man chasing Pee-wee with a big bone. Very
classic. Honestly, this reminded me, because I've done like a big rewatch of Buster Keaton films recently. Because I think I've mentioned this before. I'm watching a movie a day for the whole year of 2023. And I did a whole thing where I'm just going to binge a bunch of Buster Keaton movies. This is like a classic Buster Keaton bit. Watching it, I'm like, this is like stealing like right from like great classic, like Three Ages Buster Keaton, Steamboat Bill Jr. Buster Keaton, like classic comedy stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I also marathoned all the Hellraiser movies, but we won't get into that. That's for a different podcast. But
a new one?
Oh God. Look, okay, here's my 30-second rant on Hellraiser. I watched them because the first one came out on my birthday, and I was like, oh, I don't watch it. It's my birthday. I'll watch all the Hellraiser movies. It'll be fun. I made a huge mistake. I went through so much, waded through so much bad movie.
No one told you to assign yourself homework, but there you went.
I did. I had never seen any of them past, like, the third one, and now I know why. But yeah, like, oh my God, they got so bad. Like, I think Hellraiser Revelation might actually be the worst movie I've ever seen. And I've seen bad movies, like real bad movies. But Revelations might actually be the worst movie made by a real studio I have ever seen.
Interesting.
It might actually be. But Pee-wee's Big Adventure, not a bad movie.
No, great movie.
Spoiling it already, I think this movie's actually quite good.
Interesting.
But we eventually get to the Alamo, right?
Yeah, and we get there because Pee-wee, in Pee-wee nature, hops onto a train to avoid Andy, Simone's boyfriend. Mm-hmm. And now we have Pee-wee and a very lovely train hobo singing songs on his way to the Alamo.
This is funny because up to this point, Pee-wee is a big personality, and you could describe Pee-wee as annoying, right? Mm-hmm. He can annoy other people or whatever. I think there's a whole thing where the escaped convict finds Pee-wee grating.
Yeah.
But when Pee-wee's on the train and the hobo starts singing, it's like, oh, camp down lady, sing this song, doo-dah, and you see Pee-wee be like, yeah, and they're singing along, and then it goes on, and it's the same gag.
Jimmy Crack Corn, all these songs.
And it goes on, and you see Pee-wee being like, I can't deal with this guy, and the hobo guy's like, yeah, camp down lady. He's just the hobo guy is hyped to no end that somebody's on the train with him singing songs, and Pee-wee's like, I gotta get off this train. It's so I'm over it.
And he just yeets himself off the train, and he happens to end up, where the Alamo is.
Yes, and who is the actress that plays the tour guide?
Oh God, she's on SNL too, and she's on Third Rock from the Sun. Let me see if I can find her.
Because I have recognized in a
Jan Hooks.
I have recognized her in her voice because she's a very distinctive voice, and she is probably has the funniest singular performance in the movie.
As Tina.
Now, sir, you're going to have to hold your questions till the end, please.
Can you say maze?
Maze.
Adobe.
These walls here are made of adobe. Can you say that all with me?
Adobe.
And she's playing a very specific character. It's Texan, very polite to the point of, annoyance. And Pee-wee just wants to ask her, where's the basement to the Alamo? And she's like, no, sir, you're going to have to wait until the end of the tour for your questions. Thank you. And it's the whole thing. And this scene goes on for a while.
Yeah, and Pee-wee's just getting progressively angrier.
And she's like, you have all been the best tour I have ever had. And I really do mean that. And it's this thing where I love when the bits turn into like, this stopped being funny like a minute ago. And now it's like back to just being fucking hilarious because it rounds about on it. But that they finally get to the end of the tour and they ask Pee-wee's like, where's the basement of the Alamo? And she's like, oh honey, there's no basement of the Alamo. And everyone starts laughing at him, and then they start pointing and laughing at Pee-wee, and they're like, ha, get wrecked, nerd. And it's very funny. It's very, very funny.
And that ends up with him kind of giving up. He's given up. He finds a payphone at the bus station, and he's like, I need to call Dottie so she can wire me some cash and I can make my way home because I'm not finding my bike. And, he's trying to convince her, I really am in Texas. And
You're not in Texas?
And then he goes, okay, hold on. And then he starts singing, the stars are bright. And everyone, stops and claps.
Deep in the heart of Texas. That was a great bit. That has to come from something, right? Like
that's what you do in Texas.
Have you ever gone to Texas and been like, stars are bright,
yes,
big and bright? And you just wait for the waitress being like, deep in the heart.
It's illegal if you don't.
Really?
You have to, by law.
Interesting. It's like how you have to play like Sublime in your car if you're driving through Long Beach.
Exactly. It's illegal if you don't.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, like, Dottie's like, all right, we'll figure it out, blah, blah, blah. And then this is where he actually ends up at the biker bar, right? Because
no, he goes to the rodeo.
Is it the rodeo?
Yeah, because Andy shows up at the train station, or the bus station, because Simone is finally leaving. She's going to Paris. She's making her dreams come true. And then Andy, chases Pee-wee off, and then he ends up at the rodeo. He's trying to disguise himself. Ends up on a
bull?
I was going to say, yeah, he ends up on a bull, and then he gets knocked out, and they're trying to wake him up, and they're, son, do you know your name? No. Do you know how old you are? No. What's the last thing you remember? The Alamo. And you have them, you're like, yeah, that's right, my boy. But, then eventually he ends up at the biker bar with Elvira and all the other bikers.
Now, this moment of the movie...
so iconic.
Sure, but this movie encapsulates how I feel about the movie. Like, how I like processing this movie and why this movie is very difficult to... This is a difficult movie to, like, elevator pitch to somebody. Like, how do you sum up this entire movie in, like, a couple of sentences? This scene is, like, the best thing I can describe, because how it works out is it's a big rough and tumble biker bar, and it's setting up, Pee-wee's like, hey, everybody be quiet, I'm on the phone, and then,
I'm trying to use the phone!
Yeah, and now all the bikers are mad, and Pee-wee, tries to leave, knocks over their bikes, and now they're gonna beat up Pee-wee, right? And this is like a classic setup for a gag.
Well,
right?
Yeah, that's the Satan Helpers bar.
Yes, the Satan Helpers. And that's the thing. They're setting up for like a very classic gag. Oh, Pee-wee's going to do some like fast talk, or he's going to do something to prove his worth. Maybe there'll be a bike race, or there's this or that.
He asks for, his one request before he dies.
Yes, he asks for his one request before he dies. And again, you're thinking, oh, this is going to be a setup. He's going to try and prove his worth to the biker bars, and they're going to accept him as his own. But instead, he looks over the busboy and silently requests the go-go boots, like the platformed wedge heels. He puts them on, gets on top, and as he does that, he puts on tequila on the jukebox, gets up and just starts dancing. It's not like this super like well choreographed dance. It's just it's like a jig. He's doing a little jig on the bar. It's
the only dance I know how to do.
He's doing. You can dance better than that.
Oh, no, I can't. This is the only dance I know.
Lies and slander. But he's doing this jig on top of the bar, and then everyone's just like, at first is like, what is he doing?
And then he proceeds to break dance.
Yes, he proceeds to like break it down, and then eventually the bikes are like, you know what, Pee-wee, you're one of us. And I'm like, that encapsulates this movie to a T. There's no real logical one-to-one of anything in this movie. It is almost like free association comedy, where
Pee-wee is just the kind of person that he just steals your heart. These rough and tumble Satan's helpers, they want to kill him, and then it's like, you know what? He's funny. He's all right. You know what? I wouldn't mind if he was part of our club. He's great.
Yeah, I Yeah, but that's another thing where it's very childlike. And that's the thing about the movie where it's just like, oh, well, of course they would accept me into their gang. I can dance real good. That's the thing about this movie, that if you watch this scene and if you think it's funny, then you're going to think the whole movie's funny. But if you watch this scene and you're like, this doesn't make any sense, I don't get this, then you're not going to like the movie. This scene, you can just show in isolation and be like, do you like this? And then you'll know if you like the movie. That's how I felt watching it, where I'm like, no, this is like the scene of the movie, at least for me.
Yeah, it was one of the many. I mean, I love this scene too. It's got Elvira in it. I mean, you have all the bikers that are, let's kill him this way. Let's hang him. No, we're going to tattoo him first.
Maybe we should let him go.
No. It's just, it's just escalating. And then it ends up, with him dancing on the bar. And it's just completely breaks the tension of the room.
It's a thing where I like the moment because the bikers aren't cartoon. Because, okay, the bikers are actually like a real threat to Pee-wee. Mm-hmm. They're not like, caricatures, I guess. Like, there's a real threat to the scene, which gives it a weight, and then Pee-wee kind of breaks it down, y'all, and it changes the whole vibe of the moment. And then I think after this, they give him a motorcycle. He crashes it.
Because he's regaled his journey, his woes of, I had a bike once that I loved, and it's been taken from me. And they're like, sure, buddy, here, take a bike, and, go find your bike. And he crashes, obviously, into the sign of the bar because Pee-wee doesn't know how to ride a motorcycle.
He's not a fan.
We go into the next dream sequence. I think this is the one with the clowns.
Oh, yeah, the clown sequence. That's probably nightmare fuel for many.
Yes. And the clowns are, taking apart the bike, destroying the bike. We have Francis that appears as the devil because, Francis is the devil.
I mean, as you do.
And, Pee-wee wakes up at the hospital to watch, like, Entertainment Tonight, and it's this new movie that's being filmed, and voila, there's the bike that's, the star of the film.
And this leads us into one of the best backlot chase sequence.
I mean, if, you're wondering why I love backlots so much and I'm, curious about the history, it's this scene.
It's like this in Blazing Saddles, right?
This, Blazing Saddles, Big Fat Liar. It's
I want to say, did Gremlins 2 have a backlot chase sequence? Gremlins 2 is in one of those movies where I could say anything about it, and it's like, that might be in the movie.
I don't think it was. I think it was just it was the building that they worked in.
I remember. No, it cuts to, like, the movie theater, and Hulk Hogan's like, hey, dude, put the movie back on. Mm-hmm. Like, that's that part of the movie. But it is very funny because this whole sequence, the chase, because he gets to the movie theater, sneaks on, gets the bike, and now they're chasing. He goes to like a Godzilla movie, the moon landing, that.
He goes through like a 50s beach party movie. One of the best is, when he goes through the Christmas movie, you have Santa and Godzilla in the sleigh. And then they're about to encounter Twisted Sister that's filming a music video on the streets of the Warner Brothers backlot.
Which is wild to me. Like, one that dates the movie, like, hella dates this movie to exactly 1985. But I'm like, what the fuck is, like, D. Snyder doing in this movie? I mean,
you were dying when he rolled through the Godzilla set.
Oh, God, yes, I was dying. It was so fun. And also, it's a thing where it's like, it's not just, like, a Godzilla set. It's like, it's the thing where it's like, well, it's, it's a Godzilla set, quote unquote. No, it's like, that's actually the models for, like, Godzilla and, like, Gamera and all this other stuff. And I'm like, did Warner Brothers own the rights to Godzilla at one point? Because how did they get, like, the likeness rights to put it in the movie?
I think they have rights, and then weren't we saying that for the Matthew Broderick one, they took the rights away?
That's right, because the rights went to Warner Brothers at one point, and then Columbia or Sony somebody took the rights away, and then it ended up at Paramount, and then it got taken away again, and then it ended up at Columbia.
It's been around.
The American Godzilla rights bounced around for like 2 decades before we actually got a movie. But yeah, Pee-wee finally gets like caught, I think, but like a studio exec sees the black and white dailies, and they're like, this kid right here, I think there's a story in this. And then
he makes, his great escape out of the studio. Oh my God, when he's getting into the studio for the first time, his name is going to slip my mind. he used to be in the front of Movieland Wax Museum. You take the picture with him. What was it? George Burns?
George Burns, yeah.
Yeah, Pee-wee walks in with George Burns because George Burns has like his entourage with him. And it's just, seeing the whole, the fantastical life of being on a back lot.
Yeah.
And then it's just, the chaos of Pee-wee and seeing him find the bike, evade security, get out of the studio, and then he goes and he rescues the pets in the burning pet shop.
That's right. That's how he gets caught. Yeah, he rescues the pets from the burning down pet shop, which is a hilarious like sight gag, right? And then the studio head sees the dailies, right? Yeah. There's a lot of great vignette moments in this. I can't keep them all straight. But then they're like, this kid, he's got a story. And then we're at the drive-in. The climactic moment of the movie, and he's like picks up his concessions and he's walking back to his bike, and we see every single person he interacted with throughout the movie. We see the bikers, we see the hobo, we see the prisoner
Mickey.
We see,
and it's not just Mickey. It's Mickey on the prison bus.
Yeah, leaning out the window. We see Simone and her new French boyfriend. And as he's doing that, the Pee-wee Herman movie is playing, and it's like John Brolin, I think.
Let me see. I'm pretty sure it's John Brolin.
For a cool second, I was like, "Is that fucking Burt Reynolds?" I'm like, "No, it's John Brolin." Yeah,
Burt Reynolds.
Look, it's hilarious because
it's James Brolin. And Morgan Fairchild.
Yes, thank you. And they're doing the Pee-wee Herman movie, and it's the plot that we've seen in this movie, but it's James Bondified. Like, and he fights like ninjas when they come to steal his bike. And
James Brolin is dressed up just like Pee-wee, so it's like, James Brolin Pee-wee fighting off the ninjas.
Yes, and that he fights off ninjas, and then there's the part where it's like, oh, the real Pee-wee Herman, he's the bellhop in this scene.
Mm-hmm.
And this speaks actually to like Paul Reubens as an actor. So there's a very specific way to play bad actor.
Mm-hmm.
Paul Reubens has mastered that in this scene because John Brolin's like, the name's Herman, P.W. Herman, and it cuts back to the reaction shot of like Pee-wee in like the movie, and he's like kind of mouthing along with the lines, like he knows John Brolin's lines too, and he's mouthing along, and then he's like, James Brolin, he knows James Brolin's lines, and then he's like, and then he says his line, and he's like shifting in place a little bit, so he's always just off center of the camera.
I mean, and you mean like me during the movie when we watched it, when I was just quoting line for line for line for line?
Yes.
Because I know this movie like the back of my hand and can quote it from beginning to end.
Yes, but the Paul Reubens performance, like, what I was talking about,
and
is like he is doing a very subtle thing where he's playing Pee-wee as being a bad actor, but like we've just seen him act throughout the whole movie, and how he's doing it is so subtle, it's like perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is like a very like honed down and like laser focused performance, and you realize that at the end of the movie when you're like, oh, Paul Reubens is actually like really fucking good as like an actor. He's not just a bit. And then it ends where Dottie tries to be like, it's the end of the movie, Pee-wee, this is the romantic kiss, and he's like, no, and then credits roll. Basically.
Well, no, it's also he tells her, okay, let's get out of here, and she's like, but the movie hasn't ended yet, and he goes, I don't need to see the ending, I lived it. And then you have that great silhouette of them riding behind the screen, and it just plays, and then it transitions into the Danny Elfman iconic music.
Your favorite.
Such good movie, such good music.
But yeah, that is Pee-wee Herman. That is Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Tim Burton's first feature film. So I guess your thoughts on this film as Tim Burton's first feature film.
Makes sense.
Makes sense?
Totally makes sense. This is a very Tim Burton world. It's not his own that we'll see, as the years come by. But it totally makes sense for him to jump in this, very crazy universe.
Yes. I think it's also a thing where it shows Tim Burton as being a very uniquely singular director, and not just the whole like style and aesthetic of like the movie, right? Like, again, there's a few, we were talking about it, there's like 3 or 4 moments of the movie where you feel like this is just a pure like Tim Burtonism. A lot of it is the Pee-wee Herman stuff, but it's singular in the fact that The guy's first movie is a huge hit.
Yeah.
Critically, commercially. He follows it up with Beetlejuice, which is even more like esoteric, singular vision, auteurist thing. And that movie is also a huge critical and financial success.
Yeah.
And then they're just like, he does Batman, and it's another huge critical and commercial success. It's a massive success.
Edward Scissorhands that comes after that.
Yeah, and it's a thing where it's like, he's a guy that has a very unique, very like of his own style and aesthetic. And he starts off doing basically a job for hire for another guy's like property, right? You know, he's like Pee-wee Herman, like he's the draw.
Yeah.
But he's able to slide into it, put his own spin on things, and really breathes life into it, to where Pee-wee Herman becomes like an overnight sensation, like gets his own TV show, gets another movie, you know.
Yeah, the TV show comes out the next year.
Yeah.
And goes for 5 seasons.
Yeah, exactly. He blows up. Tim Burton just keeps rising and rising and rising until eventually he makes the next film we're watching.
This next film, which will be years later, not too many years later, but not right after this one, he will be making Ed Wood.
Yes, Ed Wood. Is that it's not the first film he does with Johnny Depp. That's Edward Scissorhands?
That's Edward Scissorhands.
But it's like the second or third?
I think it's the second, because Ed Wood came out in 94, I believe.
Yeah, and Ed Wood, this was the movie... Was this the first movie that Tim Burton ever directed that flopped?
I don't know.
Oh, we're going to find out then. But yeah, like Ed Wood, this is like a very like singular Tim Burtonism. It's a movie about Ed Wood, who was considered, and I think still is considered, the worst director ever.
And this is also a movie I have not seen in its entirety. I've only seen bits and pieces of it.
Oh, I'm excited because I don't know if I've ever seen Ed Wood or if I'm amalgamating like a lot of clips in a vague like saw it once on TBS at like midnight kind of thing. But yeah, I'm very excited to watch it.
Oh, me too. I can't wait. It's got Johnny Depp,
classic Hollywood stuff.
Classic Hollywood. Bela Lugosi is, a part of it.
But any last thoughts on Pee-wee Herman before we do our outro?
If you haven't seen Pee-wee, I would say give it a watch. I give it 2 thumbs up. Thank you to Paul Reubens, who created this character and was a childhood hero of mine. He's still a hero. Rest in peace. We lost him way too soon. But yeah, what are your thoughts? What's your rating on this?
I gave this movie 4 out of 5 on my Letterboxd, which is,
again,
I think this movie is very, very good. I honestly think the only thing that I have any issue with is like, fuck, I don't know how to pitch this movie. It's so singular, unique. It's so much fun. It's definitely a vibe, and it's a movie that really does make you kind of feel like a kid. Like there are a lot of like just good, fun laughs. It's a movie that actually there's a lot of jokes that kind of pitched for adults in this that are kind of like surprising. But yeah, like I really did enjoy this movie. I kind of want to give it another rewatch.
I think you should. And I think, since you're doing your movie of the day, you should watch Big Top Pee-wee tonight.
I might. But for everyone who wants to listen to our next episode on Ed Wood, where can they go?
If you want to listen to us on a different platform than you currently are, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and eventually YouTube. Yeah,
eventually you can go to our YouTube channel, The Film Vault. That's The Film Vault on YouTube, where Dean eventually uploads slideshow versions of this podcast. They're the closest thing we can do to video.
Yeah.
You can go there, like, comment, subscribe, check us out. We have a lot of content on there. And if you wanted to follow us on social media, where we post most of our content, you can go to
the Film Club Podcast on Instagram, where we post daily stories, upcoming episodes, and random adventures we go on.
And with that,
shh, I'm listening to reason.
All right, everybody. See you next week.